guards moved before I even understood why. 6 of them, tall and armored, closed around me in the middle of the throne hall, their spears crossing an inch from my chest. My name is Aiden Voss, and until that moment, I had been a quiet human scientist, living on the alien world of Thakal Prime, minding my own business. Now, every noble in that vast black hall was staring at me like I had committed a crime I did not even know existed. The Queen's advisor, a sharp-voiced official named Ren Kadar, stood at the center of the chamber, holding a data crystal high above his head. His voice echoed off the tall glass walls. "The test is confirmed," he announced. "The second parent of the royal brood is not a drone of this hive. The second parent is the human." Gasps rolled through the crowd like a wave. I felt my heart slam against my ribs. I had no idea what he was talking about. I had never touched the Queen in any way that could explain what he was saying, and yet the whole court was already looking at me, as if I had broken the oldest law of their civilization. Queen Sszaeth rose from her high seat, her 6 eyes fixed on me, unreadable and calm. The room fell silent instantly, the way a room falls silent when the most powerful person in it decides to speak. "Bring him closer," she said. The guards pushed me forward. My mind raced through every memory I had of this place, every meeting, every meal, every conversation, trying to understand how my name had become tangled with the birth of her children. Then it hit me, and my stomach dropped. 8 months earlier, during a diplomatic visit, the Queen had collapsed in front of me. Her body had been fighting a deadly infection that Thakal medicine could not stop in time. I remembered kneeling beside her, my hands shaking, using the only thing I had that could possibly help, a transfusion of my own bone marrow, injected in a desperate attempt to save her life. I had done it because there was no time to think, only to act. I never imagined it would come back to change my life like this. "I saved her," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "That is all I did. I do not understand how that makes me a parent." Ren Kadar's mandibles clicked in disapproval. "Your biological material entered her body. It was stored, judged, and used. Whether you understand our laws or not, the result stands. You are named in the royal bloodline." A noble near the front, a tall figure with sharp blue markings, stepped forward without permission. His name was Vesic, a rival of the Queen's inner circle, and his voice was full of poison. "This is an insult to our people," he snapped. "A human blood in the royal line. It must be removed before it spreads further. I demand the immediate execution of this creature, and the destruction of the affected larvae." The word execution hit me like a blow to the chest. I looked toward the Queen, hoping she would speak against it, but her expression remained still, calculating, giving nothing away. For a long, terrifying moment, nobody said anything at all. Then she raised one hand, and the entire hall obeyed the silence that followed. "No one touches him," she said, "until the full truth is known. Take him to the West Chamber. Guard him. Do not harm him." The guards pulled me away before I could argue, my mind spinning with fear and confusion. As they marched me through the long corridors, I caught sight of Vesic watching me from the shadows, his eyes burning with something far more dangerous than simple disapproval. The West Chamber was cold and quiet, a stone room with a single window overlooking the hive city below. I sat there for what felt like hours, replaying everything in my mind. I was not a criminal. I was not trying to change their bloodline. I had only tried to save a life, but in a world built on rigid order and ancient law, intentions did not always matter. The door opened, and to my relief, it was not another guard but a familiar face. Grace Whitfield, the embassy's field medic, rushed in with a look of pure worry. "Aiden, thank goodness," she said, closing the door quickly behind her. "Do you understand what's happening out there? Half the court wants you gone before sunset." "I'm starting to understand," I said, "but I don't know how to stop it." Grace knelt beside me, her voice low and urgent. "Listen carefully. I've been talking to one of the Queen's healers. Thakal biology stores tissue samples in an organ called the kavosh. It's like a living archive. Whatever strong donor material she has ever received can be pulled into a new brood. Your marrow was inside her system for months. It was chosen. That's the whole explanation. It's biology, not something you did wrong." "Then why does Vesic want me dead?" I asked. Grace's face tightened. Because if the court accepts a human as part of the royal bloodline, his political power crumbles. He built his entire influence on keeping the hive pure and separate from outsiders. 4 larvae with human traits destroy everything he stands for. He's not afraid of contamination, Aiden. He's afraid of losing control. Before I could respond, a low mechanical hiss echoed from the corridor outside. Grace froze, her eyes going wide. "That's not a guard's footsteps," she whispered. The door hissed open, and a small hovering device drifted into the room, its metal shell glinting under the dim light. A single red light blinked steadily on its surface. I recognized the shape instantly from embassy briefings. It was a listening drone, but the wiring along its side had been altered, rigged with something that should not have been there. "Get down!" Grace shouted, pulling me behind the stone table, just as the drone released a burst of sharp static and a spray of chemical mist into the air where I had been standing seconds earlier. My ears rang from the sound. The mist hissed against the stone floor, eating tiny holes into the surface. It was not meant to kill instantly, but to disable, to weaken, long enough for someone to finish the job quietly. Someone wanted this to look like an accident. Grace grabbed a metal tray from the table and swung it hard, knocking the drone sideways into the wall. Its light flickered and died, sparks scattering across the floor. We stood there breathing hard, staring at the smoking wreckage. "That was meant for you," Grace said, her voice shaking. "Vesic isn't waiting for the court to decide anything." "We need to tell the Queen," I said. "We need proof first," Grace answered. "If we accuse a noble without evidence, they'll use it against you even more. We need someone who can trace this drone back to its owner." That someone was Daniel Ashworth, the embassy's security officer, a calm and steady man who had spent years working alongside the call engineers. We found him in the lower archive halls, examining old maintenance records under a flickering light. When Grace explained what had happened, his expression darkened immediately. "Bring me the drone's core," he said. "If it was modified inside the palace, there will be a signature in the metal, a maker's mark hidden in the circuits. Every noble house uses a different forge." We returned to the west chamber, gathered what remained of the shattered device, and brought it to Daniel's workstation. His hands moved quickly, prying open the casing, revealing a tangle of wires and a small embedded chip no bigger than a fingernail. "There," he said, pointing to a faint engraving on the chip's surface. "This mark belongs to House Vesic. It's subtle, but it's there. This wasn't some random attack. It was planned." My heart pounded with a mixture of relief and fear. We finally had proof, but proof alone would not be enough if we could not reach the Queen before Vesic made his next move. Time was working against us, and the sun outside was already beginning to set, the deadline the court had given for their final decision drawing closer with every passing minute. "We need to move now," Daniel said, standing up. "The throne hall reopens at dusk for the final ruling. If we're not there with this evidence, the court will decide without hearing the truth." We slipped out through the lower corridors, avoiding the main halls where guards loyal to different noble houses patrolled in tense silence. The palace felt different now, charged with an energy that made every shadow feel like a threat. Grace led the way, her memory of the layout sharper than mine, while Daniel carried the broken drone wrapped carefully in cloth, protecting the evidence we needed. As we crossed a narrow bridge connecting 2 towers, a group of armed figures stepped out from the darkness ahead, blocking our path. Their armor bore the same blue markings I had seen on Vesic earlier. My chest tightened. "Turn back," one of them said, his voice flat and cold. "This area is restricted." "We need to reach the throne hall," Daniel said, keeping his tone steady. "We have evidence that must be presented before the ruling." The guard's eyes flicked toward the cloth bundle in Daniel's hands, and something in his expression shifted, a flicker of hesitation quickly hidden behind a stern mask. "There is no evidence that matters here," he said, "only the decision that has already been made." Before any of us could respond, a sharp whistle cut through the air, and the guards suddenly turned toward a different direction, distracted by something happening deeper in the tower. Grace grabbed my arm and pulled me toward a side passage, while their attention was elsewhere. "Move! Now!" she whispered. We ran, our footsteps echoing against the stone floor, hearts pounding, unsure how much time we had before the guards realized what had happened. The passage twisted downward, leading to a narrow door that opened onto the outer terrace overlooking the throne hall's grand entrance. Below us, hundreds of nobles were already gathering for the final ruling, their voices blending into a low, tense hum. "There's no time to go around," Daniel said, glancing at the distance to the entrance. "We go straight through the crowd." We stepped out into the open, moving quickly along the terrace edge, trying to blend into the gathering nobles without drawing too much attention. My pulse thundered in my ears with every step, aware that one wrong glance from the wrong guard could end everything, before we even reached the doors. Inside the throne hall, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Queen Sszaeth sat upon her high seat once more, her expression composed but watchful, while Vesic stood near the center of the chamber, clearly prepared to press his case the moment the doors opened. We slipped through a side entrance just as Ren Kadar began speaking, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "The council has reached its decision," he announced. "The human's presence in the royal bloodline threatens the stability of our people. The recommendation is removal, both of the human and the affected larvae." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. My stomach twisted painfully at the mention of the larvae, remembering the small creature with human-like eyebrows who had followed me around the biolab, calling out for me without fear or hesitation. This was no longer only about my own safety. "Wait," Daniel called out, stepping forward before the guards could stop him. "There is evidence that must be heard before any decision is finalized." The hall turned toward us in surprise. Vesic's eyes narrowed sharply as he recognized the cloth bundle in Daniel's hands. "This is not the time for interruptions," Vesic said quickly, his voice tightening. "The council has already spoken." "The council spoke without knowing that an attempt was made on the human's life just hours ago," Grace said firmly, stepping beside Daniel. "An attempt traced directly back to House Vesic." Gasps spread through the hall once more, sharper this time, filled with genuine shock. Vesic's composure cracked for just a moment, before he forced it back into place. "Lies," he said. "Fabricated accusations to save a creature that does not belong here." Queen Sszaeth raised her hand, silencing the growing noise instantly. Her eyes moved toward Daniel. "Bring the evidence forward," she said. Daniel stepped up to the base of the throne and unwrapped the damaged drone, revealing the engraved chip inside. A pair of royal engineers examined it closely under her watchful gaze, their expressions growing serious as they confirmed the mark's origin. This device was modified using tools and materials belonging exclusively to House Vesic, one engineer confirmed. "The signature is unmistakable." The hall erupted into chaos, voices rising in anger and disbelief, nobles turning toward Vesic with expressions ranging from suspicion to outright hostility. Vesic's calm finally shattered, his voice rising in desperation. "He does not belong in our bloodline," he shouted. "I did what was necessary to protect the purity of this hive." "You attempted to murder a guest under my protection," Queen Sszaeth said, her voice cold and sharp enough to silence the entire hall instantly. "You acted not out of loyalty to this hive, but out of fear for your own power." Vesic opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. Guards moved forward at the Queen's signal, escorting him from the chamber under heavy watch, his protests fading into the corridors beyond the doors. The hall remained tense even after his removal, nobles glancing at one another uncertain of what would happen next. Queen Sszaeth rose slowly from her seat, her gaze sweeping across the crowd before finally settling on me. "Bring him here," she said. I stepped forward, my legs unsteady, unsure of what judgment awaited me even now. The Queen studied me for a long moment, her expression unreadable in the way it always seemed to be, until finally she spoke, her voice carrying through the silent hall. 8 months ago, this human gave a piece of himself to save my life, expecting nothing in return. My own body chose to carry that gift forward into new life. That is not an offense against this hive. That is the deepest form of loyalty our laws recognize. She turned toward the assembled nobles, her voice growing firmer. The bloodline stands. The larvae remain protected under royal law, and the human, Aiden Voss, is recognized as kin to this hive, not through conquest or deceit, but through an act of courage freely given. A wave of murmurs spread through the hall, quieter this time, shifting slowly from shock into something closer to acceptance. Not everyone looked pleased, but no one dared to challenge the Queen's ruling after everything that had just been revealed. Grace placed a steady hand on my shoulder, and Daniel gave a small nod beside me, both of them clearly relieved that the danger had finally passed. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding, the weight of the last several hours finally beginning to lift from my chest. In the days that followed, life on Thakal Prime slowly returned to a strange new kind of normal. House Vesic was stripped of much of its influence, its schemes exposed before the entire court, while Queen Sszaeth strengthened her rule with a story that spread quickly through the hive, a story of loyalty rewarded and betrayal punished. I visited the royal nursery often after that, watching the 4 unusual larvae grow stronger each day. The one with the small patch of warm skin and human-like eyebrows always rushed toward me first, chirping happily, tugging at my sleeve with more energy than any of her siblings. The healers had taken to calling her Ellery, a name close enough to something human that it made me smile every time I heard it. Grace and Daniel remained close allies through it all, the 3 of us forming a quiet friendship built from the danger we had faced together. The embassy back on Earth received a full report of everything that had happened, and though the officials there struggled to fully understand the strange biology behind it all, they agreed on one thing without hesitation, that Thakal Prime was now home to a bond between 2 species that no one could have predicted. Queen Sszaeth and I spoke privately only once more after the ruling, standing together on a quiet balcony overlooking the hive city at dusk. She watched the golden light settle over the towers for a long moment before speaking. "You did not seek power here," she said. "You did not seek a place in my bloodline. That is precisely why my body chose you. Loyalty freely given carries a weight that ambition never can." I thought about everything that had happened, the fear, the danger, the strange twist of fate that had turned a simple act of kindness into something far greater than I ever imagined. "I only wanted to help," I said quietly. "I never expected any of this." "That," she said, turning to face me with something almost like warmth in her ancient eyes, "is exactly why it worked." Below us, the hive city glowed softly in the fading light, alive with movement and sound, a world that had nearly torn itself apart over fear of something different, now slowly learning to embrace it instead. I stood there beside the queen of an alien world, a simple human scientist who had once only wanted to study strange creatures from a safe distance, now forever woven into the story of a civilization that was not his own. And somewhere below, in the warm glow of the royal nursery, a small girl with human eyebrows and an alien heart was already learning to call the stars her home.